So here I am, I'm reading this book by Tom Peters called Wow, and he tells the story about this cab driver. And it was an unbelievable story, but believe it, it's true. Because here I am on a business trip. I fly into LaGuardia in New York, and I go to take a cab to Midtown, and I get into this taxi, and here's a guy that says to me, "Where are you headed?" And I tell him, and he's speaking to me in English. Well, first of all, you're lucky to get a cab driver in New York that speaks English these days. Then he hands me a card which says, "My mission today is to get you to your destination as quickly, comfortably, and as pleasurably as I possibly can." And I read this card and I hand it back to him, and I'm like, this is what I teach businesses that they ought to be passionate about. Here I am in a New York City cab, and I'm having a mission statement. He then hands me another card and says, "I've got the radio pre-programmed. I can turn it on to rock. I can turn it on to classical. We can talk to you about sports or news. What would you like? Or I can have the radio off." And I said, "You know what? Just turn the radio off." He hands me a newspaper at that point and says, "I've got the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, or USA Today. Would you like to read a newspaper?" And at that point, I thought maybe I was being taped for a late night show. Like, are you kidding me? And so I hand him the newspaper back, and I said, "Listen, turn that radio off, take this newspaper back. You and we need to talk." Like, who's making you do this? Is this like standard operating procedure with taxis in New York these days? And he starts laughing and he says, "Oh no, you kidding me? Yeah, you get in a cab in New York these days, you're lucky to find a guy that speaks English." And he said, "Listen, I am a voracious reader on how to build a successful business. And every time I have downtime in my taxi, I'm reading ideas on how to build a successful business, and I decided to incorporate them into my taxi business." And so he said, "Hey, by the way, would you care for a snack?" And he hands me a little basket with those little bags of pretzels and peanuts that you might get on an airline. And I'm just laughing all the way. And I said, "Look, let me give you my card." And I didn't know why I was giving him my card, but it just felt like I needed to make a connection. And he said, "Hey, don't laugh about giving me your card." He said, "Here's a half a dozen of mine. And look at all the people that have given me their cards. And I got to tell you something. Here's the deal. What I just did with you today in picking you up was a very unusual thing for me." And I'm going, "No kidding, unusual? It's about the only time I've ever seen it in a taxi." And he said, No, what I mean is that I rarely have to wait in line. And I waited in line for an hour and a half, but I was doing my reading. But I rarely wait in line. I do all of my business by referral and repeat business. And what happens is this. You know the guys that hold a sign up in the baggage area with your name on it? Well, that's me. And you take my card, give it to other people, call me, tell me when you're coming in, tell me the airport, tell me the flight, and I'll be there. And that will be terrific for you and awesome for me because I won't have to wait in that hour and a half line. Well, we're having this whole conversation, and I'm being taught sales on the way to my appointment in Midtown. I get out of the taxi, first time I've ever gotten there earlier than what I wanted. I didn't want to leave the guy. And as I'm getting out of the taxi, I felt like I had to pay for my education. I'm going to give him a big tip. And as I did, I said, "By the way, here's a huge tip. I love you. And I got to ask you, you got to be killing them on tips, huh?" And he said, "Killing them on tips?" He said, "Listen, you already told me that you speak, and you told me that you're going to tell people about me in your audiences. Well, if you do that, I want you to understand one thing. Tell them I'm killing them on tips." Last year, I was over $30,000 in tips. But don't leave it at that. Make sure that you leave it with this. Tell them I did it not for the money, but to be the best cab driver in the world. Wow, that's raising the bar. We could all benefit from that.